Good afternoon. My name is Scott Dahl, and I'm the Program Director of the Masters in Hospitality Strategy and Digital Transformation at La Roche, as well as a Professor of Digital Marketing and Revenue Management. And I'm really excited to welcome a number of students that are here today in various classes, as well as those of you that are following us on LinkedIn and other social media outlets, as we talk about a really timely topic, which is social media, and specifically the algorithm behind social media. And I'm super happy today to have a very special guest with us, Christoph Hutter. Christoph and I participated in a number of different things together. One of them is the Revenue Manager series, which is running every other week on LinkedIn Live with HospitalityNet. Very cool series. And as we were preparing for one of those sessions, Christoph just started to kind of ooze wisdom about social media that I thought was absolutely amazing and really insightful. And so in honor of Career Day on Wednesday and Career Week, what I've asked him to do is spend a little bit of additional focus, or really kind of use as his main example LinkedIn, because of its relevance for all of you who are in the process right now of beginning your career hunts. And so that's what we're going to spend the next 45 minutes to an hour doing. So enough of me. Christoph Hutter. Welcome, Christoph.
Hello. Thank you, Scott, very much for the invite and the introduction. I'm really excited to be here and share a little bit of what I learned about social media, what I learned about LinkedIn, and what's happening behind the scenes a little bit. Yeah.
So the one thing I'd like to encourage people to do, definitely be interactive. I'm going to be monitoring the questions, and I will definitely bring questions up. We'll kind of run them with a wrap up with the round of questions at the end. So certainly would love to hear from everybody that's out there watching if you have questions as well. So, but Christoph, take it away, man.
All right. So yeah, when we talk about social media and how they work, what we can say in general about all of them is, of course, every one of the social media works similarly. They have all their specific differences, of course, but what they all share in common is they try to have the user stay on their platform as much as possible. And I think we all have experienced that in one way or another already. When we, for example, watch YouTube videos, fall down the rabbit hole, and there's one video after the other, and it looks like the algorithm knows exactly what we want to see next, and it's serving us up that. And the content we engage with, the videos that we engage with, the people that we follow, and so on, that all impacts what the platform is going to serve us up. So whether that be Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, even if YouTube is not the typical social media, it still has this algorithmic approach to serve content for the user with the target and the objective to engage the person as much as possible on that platform. For today, and as Scott mentioned already in the introduction, also in light of your upcoming Career Day, we're going to have a special focus on LinkedIn as a platform. Of course, other platforms and their algorithms work similarly. Again, there may be differences, but certain things we can for sure recognize across the different platforms, some similarities. So, okay, deconstructing the social media algorithm, deconstructing LinkedIn. What does that mean? Well, first of all, social media is working with a lot of data that it has from the users, big data, vast amounts of data that nobody can really process anymore in traditional ways. So we're looking at machine learning algorithms that process this information and come up with with ways to serve out this content for us, to engage us on the platform. So when looking at LinkedIn and the LinkedIn algorithm, what is very important for them is that they are trying to predict what is the likelihood of our engagement. So how likely is it that when they're serving up certain content, a post, for example, how likely is it that we're going to engage with this? Are we going to like it? Are we going to post a comment or anything like that? And when it is likely, and the algorithm calculates a certain score for this content, then it's going to serve this up in our feed. And so we can see the one post after the other from our connections, and so on. So the most important part is really how likely is it that we're going to engage, that we're going to have some sort of reaction to this content. The next important part is, of course, the actual engagement itself. When we're then seeing a certain content, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to just scroll by, or are we going to actually engage with it, like it, or post a response, share it, and so on? And what is a bit challenging is, of course, that we're consuming a lot of content, but we don't necessarily interact with all of it. Maybe because we just don't want to like this content, we don't want to share a comment, don't want to share our own view, although we have our own opinion, we're interested in the topic. We maybe don't want to go out there to the entire world and post this publicly. So what LinkedIn did in order to counteract this dilemma that we watch content, we're not really interacting with it, but still it's exactly what we want to see, and thus the platform should serve us up more of that content to kind of fight this dilemma. LinkedIn introduced last year what they call dwell time. And dwell time is basically a metric that describes how much time do we spend watching a certain content. So if you imagine that you're on your phone or also on your laptop, a desktop computer, and you're seeing a certain post, how much time do you spend on that content before you scroll away, moving on to the next content? And LinkedIn has come up with this method, because as we said, the engagement, that's black and white. If I like it, then the algorithm can see, okay, this is something that I appreciate, so it can serve me similar content. But if I'm not really doing that, well, how can they measure it? So it's not really something that the algorithm would know. So what they do instead is they measure how much time do we spend looking at this content before we move on to the next, and that's what's called dwell time. There are certain similarities when I'm thinking about regular web analytics as well. The bounce rate, how much time does it take when I go find my search result on Google, go onto the website, how much time does it take before I bounce back to the search results? So those are all quite similar metrics. The next thing that the algorithm looks at, or where the algorithm shows certain different behavior in a way, is when we're looking at what does it do on a desktop and what does it do on a mobile device. And what we can see is that the way how LinkedIn serves up content differs from device to device. So if I had the same profile open on a desktop and a mobile device, and I refresh my feed simultaneously on both devices, I'm not going to see the same on both devices. The content will be different on mobile versus the desktop experience. So we can suspect that there are actually multiple algorithms at place. One algorithm that targets the desktop, and one algorithm that targets the mobile experience. So that's a little bit an interesting fact. All right, so how can we use this information now? And when we are thinking about posting ourselves, how can we ensure that we see our content reach the maximum possible audience? That is especially important, of course, when we're trying to grow our own brand, build our own network, and grow our presence on LinkedIn. And similar things will work again also on other platforms. The way how LinkedIn goes about it is they have something called the Social Selling Index, or SSI. And this is a metric that LinkedIn calculates basically every day, where the algorithm looks at you and looks at what you do on LinkedIn, looks at your network, how you interact, the content you put out there, and so on, and calculates this social selling index, and based on how well you're doing for that, the higher your SSI, the more push you receive from the algorithm, and for the content you put out there. So
Can I ask you? This is almost really effectively the beginning of formalized clout, right? We've talked about clout and people seeing different offers based on the amount of influence they have. But here's basically a dashboard that tells everyone even what are the reasons that they have influence versus how they could have more and things like that. So it's is it basically the same thing?
Yeah, in a way, yes. We can see from these metrics here. So basically, for the SSI, LinkedIn looks at four kind of grand topics, and looks at how well you're doing for all the different ones. For example, how well established is your personal brand or your professional brand? Meaning, how well did you fill in the LinkedIn profile, and how do you engage with the content that your network puts out there? What kind of content do you put out there yourself, and so on? And the more active you are, the more established you are, of course, and over time you will see this grow if you interact with the platform. And to give you somewhat an idea, and it's very important to understand that, of course, this is kind of the secret sauce of LinkedIn, and they're not really publishing the ins and outs of how their algorithm work and all that. Similar to Google, unless you're an engineer at Google, you don't really know how Google works and how the search result page is put together and all that. We have a pretty good idea because we're doing a lot of testing, and we understand that if we do certain things on our website, Google will pick up on that and will boost us in our ranking. And if we do certain other things, Google won't like that and will not push our ranking there. And for LinkedIn, it's similar. If we're doing certain things that the algorithm likes, we're going to get a push. And if we're doing things the algorithm doesn't like, and we're going to look into that a little bit more in detail, the algorithm is not going to help us. The important thing is that all these numbers that we're going to put forward now, they're somewhat good estimates and guesses based on testing that was done. Just like with SEO and the search engines, we don't really know. We just test and test and test and come up with hypotheses on. Well, we tested that, so we probably can imagine that this is what the algorithm actually does. And so when we look at the SSI, what we can see is that if you have an SSI of about 60 or more, that is kind of the optimum that you need in order for 100% of the potential network to see that content. If you have less than 60, and the less you have, the less LinkedIn is going to serve up your content to your audience, to your network. So somewhat 60 to 75%. That's kind of the ideal. If you have 45 to 60%, a score of 45 to 60, then your reach is about 75%. If your score is somewhere in the range of 30 to 45, then you have a reach of 50%. And if it's under 30%, you only reach 25% of your audience. On the other hand, if your score is 75 to 90, then you have a reach of 125%. So you're reaching more than your actual share and normal viewers. And when you have a score of 90 or more, then you have a reach of 150%. And so LinkedIn has this SSI that they publish, and you can just look it up. You can Google it. What is my SSI? And then you will see it. Or if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I can send you the link where you can find out that yourself. It's a part of the Sales Navigator platform, which is somewhat one of the LinkedIn company products. They have to help salespeople sell more effectively. It is a separate product from LinkedIn that has its own algorithm. So if you have Sales Navigator, you open a Sales Navigator app. If you interact with content in Sales Navigator, it's independent from LinkedIn. And the Sales Navigator algorithm is going to take that into account, while the regular LinkedIn algorithm is not going to take these things into account. So it's almost like two different networks, although from a public point of view, it's the same people, the same content, and all that.
Christoph, there was a question, actually. Rajvir's is kind of the perfect one to use as the basis for them, but you mentioned some distinctions about the platforms, mobile versus desktop, and there was that kind of perked a lot of things up. So I have a couple of questions that are probably follow up to this one, but I wonder if I could roll you back a sec and just have a look, and it's a great question. It's asked very well. Why, when people engage in content, as Rajvir asks, on both mobile and laptop, why does the content differ by device?
Well, different user experience on the user experience on different devices lets them to believe, or well, I guess they test these things, and so they know we consume content differently depending on the device that we are on. And so when we're on a mobile phone, the way how we scroll through content is very different. We depending on your settings, may or may not have enabled sound, for example, on video, while we might have a different setting when we're on a desktop computer. And this fact alone already makes a big difference in what we would do with the content that's coming up. So we're going to see that a little bit also when we're talking about the different kinds of content that we find on LinkedIn. But generally, and it's the same thing for Google as well, in regular SEO, when you're looking at websites on your smartphone versus you're looking at it on a desktop PC, the site looks different, it behaves different, and so what is important for the search engine, and LinkedIn in a way is a search engine as well. The way how it sees that, it will treat it differently. Bandwidth, for example, could be an issue when you're on your mobile device, depending on what area you're in. It could be that it is not a great user experience if the video were to autoplay, and you would then see a lot of video content that eats up your bandwidth, especially in markets where bandwidth is still very expensive, like here in Canada, for example. So from that point of view, the algorithm will kind of feed you content that is also more appropriate for the device.
Based really on even your own behavioral profile, or certainly based on the behavioral profile of the profile that you're part of, right? In terms of, some people have a mobile first kind of a mentality. Some people consume things quickly on mobile, but are much more lingerers and lurkers online when they have a bigger format. And so it's device adaptability by the site, but it's also our own behavior as it changes based on how we use those devices, and even based on which of those devices we tend to be on at certain times of the day consistently can shape the way we're shown information, right? So it's a very pretty sophisticated ball of wax that they use to try and, as you mentioned, really just keep us there as much as they can. So if they can, they don't care about individual advertisers. They care about having us be in that environment, because then they can monetize it with some advertiser. They really don't care who it's going to be. So yeah. So and also, I think a little bit, if you don't mind, just kind of speak to what are the implications of demographic when it comes to device, and also even when it comes to platform a little bit.
LinkedIn is maybe a little bit particular when it comes to that, because contrary to many of the other platforms, LinkedIn is very strong in their premium products. So I spoke already about Sales Navigator, but LinkedIn has multiple products that you actually have to pay for. So if you want to have a better user experience for your job search, or for your recruitment efforts, or for your sales practice, LinkedIn offers different products for that. They're paid, and Sales Navigator is and the other ones, they're not cheap. I think the Sales Navigator is somewhere around $80 a month. And for anyone who is interested in that, LinkedIn is going to increase the price on July 1st. It's not really that much out there, that information. But if you're thinking about buying Sales Navigator, then get a 1-year subscription now, because on July 1st, prices are going to increase by 15%. So other social media like Facebook and the various Facebook networks like Instagram, etc., they don't have paid experience. So there, the income for the platform itself is 100% based on the advertisement they sell. The advertisement cost that you have on Facebook, Instagram, etc., the cost per click, so to speak, is much less than you would have on LinkedIn. LinkedIn advertisement is actually really expensive. On the other hand, it is super targeted, and extremely effective because it has such a wealth of data on the professional side of people. So in a way, that was a brilliant way to build this network, to build it as a kind of giant job application network in the beginning, and it's much more than that today, and it's one of the best sales tools that are available for any kind of company, but especially in hospitality as well. We're going to see a little bit, answering also the question, we're going to see a little bit of these details also further down in the presentation. The one important thing when it comes to demographics that we can say is all the social networks have, of course, a pretty good understanding about who you are and who your network is. And based on this information, they can come up with not just a demographic, but a psychographic conclusions on the content they will want to serve you with, so that you stay more time on the platform and engage in more content and consume, in most cases, more advertisement, or generate more content to serve others in your network. Okay. Moving on from the SSI as one of the important factors in what is indicative of boosting your own content, the next part that I will look into a little bit is your own profile strength. And that's something that's especially important when talking about your future career. The way how you build your profile on LinkedIn is extremely important, because it will show not only future employers what kind of a person you are and who you are, but it will also show the algorithm who you are and the kind of person you are, and how much it's going to push your content that you put out there and your profile in the various profile searches. One of the most important things, as you can imagine, is to have a great profile picture out there. Of course, it absolutely has to be a professional photo. So you cannot take the great snapshot from your last vacation, even though the sunset at the beach was fantastically beautiful and stunning. It may not really be the kind of picture that you want up there. Definitely not a group picture or anything like that. So it really should be you. It should be taken by a professional photographer who knows what they are doing, and it should depict you in a way that is appropriate for a professional network, which LinkedIn is. The next important thing is the headline. So if you do a LinkedIn search, what you're going to see, the first thing that you're going to see is the picture, and then the second thing that you will see is the headline. And by default, the headline, and LinkedIn is prompting you over and over again to do that, to update that headline to match your current job title. But it doesn't have to be the job title. In reality, it can be anything. What kind of a headline you put out there, the more creative you are and the more interesting you make that. That's the first thing that will speak to the people, potential recruiters and business partners. They will see this headline, and well, it's an advertisement for yourself. And the more interesting this advertisement is, the more likely they are going to interact with your profile. And if they interact with your profile, the algorithm is going to pick up on that, and it will flow in the overall calculations of how you're doing on that network. The next important thing for profile strength is your experience. And what what LinkedIn does, it has basically different steps of profile quality in a way. And once you kind of check all the boxes, they give you what they say is an all-star profile. So when you really have a profile that's rounded up, then you reach all-star level, and then you get a boost for your content. And what they want to see is, in your experience, you have a current job and you have at least 2 previous jobs. Now that may be a little bit tricky for people, especially in the beginning of their career, and also for especially hospitality right now, where a lot of people do not have a current job because their hotels is closed, they were laid off, and that's of course a huge challenge. So one thing that you can do in that case, if you do not have a current job, you can speak to that in an interesting way. A few years ago, when I moved from North America to Europe, for example, in that period where I was in between jobs during the move, what I did was, as my headline and as my job title, I put on revenue manager, because that's what I was looking for job-wise. And as my company, I simply said, your hotel. And so anybody who would visit the profile would understand, okay, that person is looking for a revenue management job, but it's not the looking for a new opportunity, looking for a new challenge kind of description that is not really that interesting to recruiters to see. So you can be a little bit more creative there in what you put out there. All right. The next important thing when it comes to the all-star profile is that you add skills. So on your LinkedIn profile, you can add up to 50 different skills. And it can literally be very creative. If you type in skills, then you will see what other people have already put up there. And literally, apparently, there is even the skill of chewing gum. So not a very appropriate thing to do. But if you start looking through LinkedIn profiles, you will actually come a lot of very creative ways how the different features are used. Of course, what you will want to do is you will want to add skills that are relevant for your job search, relevant for your career. That could be different property management systems that you have learned. That could be customer service is one skill that you have learned, and so on. So that's really important. You can also play around with it a little bit and see if things work or raise interest or not. The next thing after skills is your summary. That's kind of the about part where you speak a little bit about yourself. And from time to time, you come across profiles where people write in the third person about themselves. That's not really common practice on LinkedIn. Typically, you're curating your own profile. So writing about yourself in the third person is a little bit weird. And of course, everybody knows that. Everybody in the recruitment space is aware of that as well. So please write about yourself in the first person. Make it an interesting part about yourself. And I think you have maybe around 2,000 characters to do that. You don't have to use it. But I would recommend that you use as much of that real estate as possible. And one important thing, as I mentioned earlier, LinkedIn is also a search engine. And when recruiters search, they can search for keywords. Just like you would look for keywords on Google, you can place keywords into the different parts of your LinkedIn profile. And that is going to also help the algorithm classify you and your profile when LinkedIn recruiters are going to go and find their next talents. And the next thing that's pretty straightforward. Choose your industry. So that's probably going to be hospitality and your location wherever in the world you are. That's important, and that is also going to impact the kind of content that you will see. And lastly, of course, education, or not lastly, but next point, your education. So if you're about to graduate, then this will be updated for sure very soon. And if you're still having a few years ahead of you, then you absolutely want to write that in as well, so that people are aware. And where education is extremely powerful is when you're looking at alumni, and not only the network that you can benefit from there, but you're really going to a very, very good school. And so alumni, when they recognize you as somebody who went to the same school, that is definitely going to give you a huge boost as well. So that's a very important part of getting the all-star label. And the last point, that's your connections. You need at least 50 connections in order to be able to get the all-star label, and that's not a lot. That really everybody should be able in a few minutes to get to a list of 50 connections. You really need to grow your network as much as you can, and that's one thing that I can absolutely recommend for anybody who has not done that. Take your phone, open your contact list, and go through every one of your contacts and just add them to LinkedIn. You can have LinkedIn go in your contacts automatically and kind of get all your Google contacts, etc. I'm a little bit hesitant to grant access to LinkedIn to my Google contacts, so I have entered all those things manually. Also, I don't have my entire network in my Google contacts. But that's a possibility that you have. And once you have added all these contacts, then you see that you will get a boost from the platform. So you see here part of the description that LinkedIn itself puts out there for the All-Star label is that it's 27 times more likely that you're found if you have an all-star profile. And getting an all-star profile is not that difficult. As you just saw, all those things are quite basic and you can easily achieve that. But the interesting thing to know is that only about 51% of the profiles on LinkedIn are actually really fully filled out, and a lot of them lack a lot of the details. And so it's quite easy to stand out, even if you're at the very beginning of your career, you don't have a huge work life to look back on, and your network is starting to build. It's still possible and not that difficult at all to stand out. So I would really recommend you to go and do that. Shifting a little bit gear here, I believe that you have recently discussed the topic of hashtags, and hashtags are also something that you have on LinkedIn. LinkedIn hashtags are somewhat maybe a little bit newer than the hashtags on other platforms, and maybe not that widespread yet, but they're extremely powerful. And one of the powers is that, well, you can follow hashtags, of course, and you will then be served with that content. And if you use hashtags in your own posts, then your network, and not only your network, also people who follow these hashtags are going to receive your content. And I picked up some of the hashtags that I have used myself on previous posts, and just went yesterday into LinkedIn and looked at the current follow account for these different hashtags. So you see hotels followed by 112,000 people, revenue management followed by 15,000 people. I recall a few years ago, maybe 2018 or early 2019, I followed the revenue management hashtag, and I think I was the 259th person to follow that. So you see that only in a few years' time, the revenue management hashtag really grew very much. So you see the adoption of hashtags on LinkedIn grow quite a bit, and I definitely would recommend to do that. Use 3 to 9 hashtags in your posts. If you use less than that or more than that, then LinkedIn could consider your post not that valuable, and you get only 20 to 40% of the reach that you would otherwise get. So 3 to 9 hashtags, and you can mix it up a little bit. Use some of the hashtags that have a large following, like revenue management or hotels. And some of them that are a little bit more specific, like hotel owners. When I want to address something that is relevant to hotel owners, I can do that. Now, it's only 352 people who follow that hashtag, but it also means that the likelihood that I'm going to reach this audience is very high, and it's a super hyper targeted keyword in a way that I can use in my posts to address this audience and to reach this audience. And the really big deal about hashtags is that hashtag followers are prioritized over your network. That means that while normally when you post something, only in your network can see it, if you use hashtags, you can actually talk to anyone, whether you're connected with them or not. Another powerful thing that you can do when you're posting content to improve your reach is that you tag people. So you can write at and then the name of the person or a company name, and that is going to help your reach. Now, it's not going to help your reach automatically. What has to happen is that the person you tag needs to engage. So they need to come to your post, give it a like or a share or a comment. And when they do that, then you have a positive impact. If 50% of the people that you tagged interact with your post, then you get a boost. On the other hand, if less than 50% interact with your post, then you don't get that positive impact. And on the contrary, if it's 25% or less, then you probably drop by about 20 to 30% on your visibility. So use tagging wisely and make sure that the people who tag will interact with the post. So what you can do with LinkedIn posts, we spoke about that already a little bit. How you can engage with it, you can of course like a post, and there are different ways how you can like the post. Just the thumbs up is the most basic one. Is also the one that on mobile devices is most used, just because it's much easier with the thumb to just tap the like button once and stick with that. But you can have also other options available. And which ones you use or which ones your audience uses doesn't really matter. There are some studies that suggest that the support icon, so the hand with the heart, gives a little extra push of maybe 10%. But other than that, there is not a big difference. The really powerful engagement that you can do is the comment. That's something that will boost the content the most. And the last thing you can do is share it. And sharing actually is pretty pointless. LinkedIn, in a way, doesn't really like that too much and treats it as duplicate content. And yeah, you don't really get a lot of visibility out of that. So it doesn't really help you to share content. It's much better to like it, and even better to comment on posts that you see. The different content types that you can put out there is the text only or text with a little picture. That's another possibility. And that's going to have a quite decent reach. You can attach a document like a PDF, for example, to your post. You can, of course, upload video. Now, a very important thing is that when you upload videos, upload it natively to the platform. That means you take your video from your device and you really upload it to LinkedIn. Don't just link to a YouTube video. LinkedIn, like all the other social media platforms, try to get you to stay on the platform. So if you're posting a link to an external site, they don't like that at all, and they're actually going to punish you for that. So link to a YouTube video, you can expect a drop of about 30 to 55% when you link to a YouTube video. So just upload it directly to LinkedIn. That's much better. The video should be ideally 30 to 60 seconds, and definitely not more than 3 minutes, ideally in square format so that it looks good on the mobile, and ideally have subtitles, as a lot of people, especially on the mobile, don't have the audio on. The external links I spoke to, try to avoid that where you can. Not more than one external link. Some people say to put it in the first comment. That's something that we know from other platforms like YouTube, for example, where people write the link in the comments instead of writing it in the description or in the video itself, so as that algorithm treats that content more favorably. There are differing opinions on LinkedIn out there, how bad it really is. Putting it in the comment has also the side effect that, especially if you have a lot of comment, it may get buried. Now you can sort the comments in chronological order, so you will always be able to easily find the first comment, sorry. But it's an extra step that may not really help that much. And another hack that you could do is, after you posted it, a couple of minutes later, you go in, edit the post, and then add the link to it. Then it can be that the algorithm doesn't pick up on that, and you will not drop the organic reach that you could otherwise have. LinkedIn articles, also a way to put content out there, doesn't have a lot of reach. So you don't really get a lot of engagement from articles. The best thing that you can do is to put a post out there and actually attach a document to it. That's what's most interactive and where people most engage with it. All right. Timing, that's really, really important. When you post something, how fast people respond to it and interact with it, that is extremely important. That's valid for all the different platforms as well. If YouTube, for example, sees that there's a lot of interaction with the videos and a lot of people pull the videos soon after they are posted in the first hour or so, then it's going to give that video a push. And the same goes for LinkedIn. When you're posting something, it's critical what happens in the first 2 hours to get as much interaction on that post as possible. And for you as the author, it's important that for the first 24 hours, you really go in there and you respond to all the comments. And it should be meaningful responses, minimum 5 words, and really addressing a question, and not just say, thanks for your comment. Really engage with what they said. That's going to build a conversation. Maybe ask a question that's going to build a conversation, and that's going to help further boost that content. And another thing that's maybe not that obvious at first is try to avoid multiple posts in a 24-hour window. And the reason for that is your second post is going to cannibalize your first post. So if you put a post out there and it performs quite well, and then you put another one out there, you're actually taking away some of the visibility that the LinkedIn algorithm gives you, and directs it to the second post. But because now the second post doesn't have the full attention of the possible audience, because some of it went to the first one, you actually have less of a reach, and you only can reach about 75% of your actual audience with that. And if you had a third post, then you could even reach 60% or less. So try to avoid posting multiple times. I spoke already to comments as being very, very powerful, and that's especially in the beginning when you're starting to build up your profile. Go and find content that you can comment on. Comments boost content a lot, so they're about twice as powerful as a like, and about 8 times as powerful as a share. So don't discredit comments. That's actually the one of the most important things that you can do in order to build your own profile and build your reach. Um, and you should when you write a comment and somebody responds to your comment, again respond within the 2 hours for a 24-hour window. That's really quite important. Shares, I already mentioned that, doesn't have a lot of reach, only 10 to 15% of the reach compared to a simple comment. So it's not really that important to share content. Um, Unless you get the original author to come and post on your content. That could boost your post by about 3 to 4 times. But other than that, it's not that great of a thing. And it's important for companies. Don't ask your staff to share your posts. Better have them repost the content natively in the profile. So it's something, if you go to internships or you start working after your school, that you can take with you as an important piece of information. Try to avoid sharing your company posts. Now, what can you do to grow your tribe, as Seth Godin says? As I said, the most important thing that you can really do is you comment. Go on there every day and comment to what the people in your network write, and find the hashtags and comment on those. Try to post every week. That will help. Make sure you stay on top of your LinkedIn notifications. Every time you have a mention or something is relevant to you, the algorithm actually tells you, hey, go and check this out, follow up on that. Especially when you're very active, that can be quite a task, but it's a really important thing to do. Like I said, respond to comments. And people who comment on your posts or respond to your posts with a comment or a like, connect with them. That's how you can grow your audience very, very quickly and very easily. And lastly, as I said, check the hashtags and follow hashtags in our world of hospitality. That's how you can also create a lot of great connections by interacting with the content around the different hashtags. Some hacks, what you can do to boost your presence. When you accept somebody on a mobile device, so you get a connection request and you accept them on the mobile device, you're actually not going to see the content of that person on your desktop. So maybe something, and why that is, I really don't know. But maybe something to keep in mind when you're accepting connections, accept them on your desktop, or you have to engage with them. So whenever somebody kind of falls out of your reach, you have to engage with them twice. So that could be that you message them, or you give them an endorsement for their skills, or you engage with them in any other way, give them likes and comments on their posts. You have to do that twice, then they will appear. So then even your mobile contacts would appear on your desktop feed. The next thing that we can say, yeah, we can boost the reach of your shares when you get the original post or the original author to interact with the post. And something that I see have seen recently, maybe inspired by Clubhouse and the lack of the ability to format the Clubhouse bio. A lot of people go, including myself, go on different websites, format the content there, and then copy it over so that you have different fonts and characters that otherwise are not available in the platform. For LinkedIn, you absolutely don't want to do that. And the reason is that search engines actually can't really read that in that case. And you would lack a lot of the visibility that you could otherwise get through search engines if you use alternate fonts. So best to stay away from that. You don't really need that on LinkedIn. You can do it differently. Interesting also that connections and followers, both things are available on LinkedIn. You can connect with people, but they have to accept your connection request, of course. But you can follow anyone, and you can go out there, follow anyone, and then you will see their feed or their content in your feed. But what is important to know is that your connections trump the followers. So content that is put out by your connections will appear in your feed over the content from people or companies that you follow. All right, that's it about the how to talk a little bit about LinkedIn and the algorithm and how it works. So let's look at questions. I want to already now thank you very much for your time today. And if you have any more questions after this session or would like to reach out to me, of course, connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Christoph. First of all, a ton of amazing information in a short amount of time. There's a couple of groups of questions that I would kind of like to address. And the first one, it's a good question from Charles. How do you market yourself when you have sort of, is there a danger with spreading your attention too thin if you have multiple skills? I guess is how I would ask that.
So the most important thing with social media, with marketing, SEO is you need to test what works for you, because what works for me may not at all work for you. With LinkedIn especially, a lot of it will depend on your network. And if you in your network have a lot of people that consume video and don't really want to read anything, and in my network, my people don't want to watch videos, they like to read. If I put out a lot of videos, it's not going to reach them. So that's one important answer to that question. And the same applies to if you have different interests, try to see what works. It's always beneficial to niche down, to decide, okay, what is it that you want to talk about? But you will have to find that out, especially now that you're at the beginning of your career. You will have to find that out, what really works. And I would just go ahead and test and see what resonates with your network and what you want to write about today. And maybe next week it's different. That's completely fine. Just give it a try and see what works for you. The same would apply to, there's a lot of advice out there as to what time of day and what day of the week to post content at. And the standard answer is always, on Tuesday between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. That's when you should post your content. Well, my network is all over the world. And I found that the best reach I get is if I post somewhere at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, my time, then people in Australia see it in their morning, start to interact with the content, and then kind of it goes around the world. And that's how I can reach the biggest audience. Doesn't always work, but that's how it works the most. And so my answer to that question is just, just give it a try and see what works for you.
So, and Charles, to answer your specific question, I think the other opportunity really is to think of it from a storytelling perspective. And I think you can throw one blanket over digital marketing and market research and tell a consistent story with that. So probably can weave them together a little bit with storytelling as well. You mentioned building your network, and one of the things I wanted to at least comment for me personally, I'm much more likely to accept a connection request if it comes with a message. If someone helps me understand how I'm connected with them. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Connection requests are somewhat a big ask. You want to be invited into the personal LinkedIn realm of somebody. Now, if you have a rapport with that person already, then it's quite easy to somewhat get the foot in the door. But especially now that you're at the beginning of your careers, you will probably reach out to a lot of people who have no idea who you are and why you want to connect with them. And I get a lot of connection requests, and the majority, unfortunately, are without any messages. And then I have to decide, okay, is that an interesting person? Do I like the profile or not? Do I like what they put out, or does it not really pique an interest? But if there is a message, then that changes a lot. And especially if that message speaks to some of the content that I put out there. So that my recommendation is when you find somebody that you want to connect with, go a little bit through their feed and find some of the posts that they either liked or that they wrote themselves, and then send the connection request and speak to that post specifically, ask a question or just some follow-up on that post. If you want to really play the long game, that's especially something that in sales will be very important and useful. You probably don't want to immediately come with the ask and come with the connection requests. But what you can do is just either follow the people, or you can copy a link to their profile in a spreadsheet somewhere, and from time to time, every week or so, pass by and then go through their feed and go through their posts and start commenting on what they write. And every time you comment on somebody else's post, they get a notification that you commented. And so with a little bit of time, they will actually see your name and they will become familiar with you and your profile. And if then after a couple of months you reach out and say, hey, let's connect. I really like what you wrote about rate parity, for example. Then there is already somewhat a rapport, and it's much more easy to accept such a connection request.
Yeah, I think it's really critical to understand who you're asking to connect with, really. And you mentioned, you're asking to come into their lives personally. I'm in a different stage in my life professionally. I'm not trying to build my network much larger. It grows organically, but I'm not in a real aggressive growth mode. And yet, I'm asked very often from connections of mine to speak to other connections that I have, really to give an endorsement, which to me is one of the primary benefits of LinkedIn. And so I actually don't typically connect with a perfect stranger. I need some sort of a reason that I would be able to say something about you if someone reached out to me. So make sure you understand everybody may have a little different philosophy about that too. Don't be put off if they don't connect with you, but clearly you're going to help your chances a lot if you include a message. And you gave some great tips on making that message relevant. So we're right up against the time. So just real quick, one more question for those of you in my marketing class. It continues shortly. There's a link on our Moodle page. We're going to start back up at 3:15. But there's one additional question, another great question from Rajveer, and that is the role of endorsements. What's the role of endorsements in the whole LinkedIn process?
It's very important if you are able to get endorsements to put them up there, because of course it is the highest praise that you can get, and there are recruiters out there that will look for the endorsements, and it somewhat oftentimes trumps a letter of recommendation, because it's a public review of how great of a person you are, and so make sure that when you're doing internships, or if you're already working and you move on to your next challenge, make sure that you're getting a recommendation from your previous employer, or even colleagues. It doesn't have to be your boss. It can be anyone that has some relevancy in saying why you are an addition to anyone's team. So definitely pursue endorsements for your
Also, one of the easiest ways to get them, frankly, is to give them, because it triggers a whole process of that person being asked if they'd like to reciprocate. And so, if I was to endorse you, Christoph, one of the first things that's going to happen is going to say, "Hey, this person endorsed you. Do you want to endorse them for something?" Right? So it's kind of a viral endorsement, a possible environment. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're sort of right up to the time. Thank you so much. Amazing. Exactly what I was looking for. With some great insights into how to manage the process, and how can, right now, if we're thinking about our careers, think about some of the nuggets that we were given today in terms of being able to work together, all of us, to build sort of the LaRoche network and the LaRoche notoriety within the LinkedIn community. Super important for all of you in terms of the value of the degrees that you've invested in. So thank you very much, Christoph. Any final word of wisdom for us before we call it a day?
Well, my final word of wisdom is you're all building your networks right now. So I expect every one of you watching today, reach out on LinkedIn and let's connect. Just mention that that you saw this masterclass today, and I will accept your connection request. And I'm always happy to help with anything that I can. So don't be shy.
Fantastic. One other nugget I'll share with you. If you Google the social selling index, very, very quick link with LinkedIn that will give you your own. You can find out what yours is. And I looked at mine, and mine's not quite as high as yours, man. So I appreciate being connected with you. So, but anyway, other than that, thanks very much, students that are here. I'll see some of you in about 7 minutes in class. The rest of you, I'll see you all very soon. And for everyone that joined, I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to connecting with you all soon. Thanks again, Christoph.
Thank you.